I pulled the door open. Augustus wore a black suit, narrow lapels, perfectly tailored, over a light blue dress shirt and a thin black tie. A cigarette dangled from the unsmiling corner of his mouth. Hazel Grace, he said, you look gorgeous. I said. I kept thinking the rest of my sentence would emerge from the air, passing through my vocal cords. But nothing happened. Then finally I said, I feel underdressed. Ah, this old thing? He said, smiling down at me. Augustus, my mom sat behind me. You look extremely handsome. Thank you, ma'am, he said. He offered me his arm. I took it, glancing back to Mom. See you by 11, she said, waiting for the number 1 tram on a wide street busy with traffic. I said to Augustus, the suit you wear to funerals, I assume? Actually, no, he said. That suit isn't nearly this nice. The blue and white tram arrived, and Augustus handed our cards to the driver, who explained that we needed to wave them at this circular sensor. As we walked through the crowded tram, an old man stood up to give us seats together, and I tried to tell him to sit, but his gesture toward the seat insistently. We rode the tram for the 3 stops, me leaning over Gus so we could look out the window together. Augustus pointed up at the trees and asked, Do you see that? I did. There were elm trees everywhere along the canals, and these seeds were blowing out of them. But they didn't look like seeds. They looked for all the world like miniaturized rose petals drained of their color. These pale petals were gathering in the wind like flocking birds, thousands of them, like a spring snowstorm. The old man who'd given up his seat saw us noticing and said in English, Amsterdam spring snow. The Ipen threw confetti to greet the spring. We switched trams, and after 4 more stops, we arrived at a street split by a beautiful canal. The reflections of the ancient bridge and picturesque canal houses rippling in water. Orangey was just steps from the tram. The restaurant was on one side of the street, the outdoors sitting on the other, on a concrete outcropping right at the edge of the canal. The hostess's eyes lit up as Augustus and I walked toward her. Mr. and Mrs. Waters, I guess, I said. Your table, she said, gesturing across the street to a narrow table inches from the canal. The champagne is our gift. Gus and I glanced at each other, smiling. Once we'd crossed the street, he pulled out a seat for me and helped me scoot it back in. There were indeed 2 flutes of champagne at our white tablecloth table. The slight chill in the air was balanced magnificently by the sunshine. On one side of us, cyclists pedaled past, well-dressed men and women on their way home from work, improbably attractive blonde girls riding side saddle on the back of a friend's bike, tiny helmetless kids bouncing around in plastic seats behind their parents. And on our other side, the canal water was choked with millions of the confetti seeds. Little boats were moored at the brick banks, half full of rainwater, some of them near sinking. A bit farther down the canal, I could see houseboats floating on pontoons. And in the middle of the canal, an open-air, flat-bottomed boat decked out with lawn chairs and a portable stereo idled toward us. Augustus took his flute of champagne and raised it. I took mine, even though I'd never had a drink aside from sips of my dad's beer. Okay, he said. Okay, I said, and we clinked glasses. I took a sip. The tiny bubbles melted in my mouth and journeyed northward into my brain. Sweet, crisp, delicious. That is really good. I said. I've never drunk champagne. A sturdy young waiter with wavy blonde hair appeared. He was maybe even taller than Augustus. Do you know, he asked in a delicious accent, what Dom Perignon said after inventing champagne? No, I said. He called out to his fellow monks. Come quickly, I am tasting the stars. Welcome to Amsterdam. Would you like to see a menu or will you have the chef's choice? I looked at Augustus and he and me. The chef's choice sounds lovely, but Hazel is a vegetarian. I'd mentioned this to Augustus precisely once, on the first day we met. This is not a problem, the waiter said. Awesome, and can we get more of this? Gus asked. Of the champagne. Of course, said our waiter. We have bottled all the stars this evening. My young friends got the confetti, he said, and lightly brushed the seed from my bare shoulder. It hasn't been so bad in many years. It's everywhere. Very annoying. The waiter disappeared. We watched the confetti fall from the sky, skip across the ground in the bridge, and tumble into the canal. Kind of hard to believe anyone could ever find that annoying. Augustus said after a while, people always get used to beauty, though. I haven't gotten used to you just yet. He answered, smiling. I felt myself blushing. Thank you for coming to Amsterdam, he said. Thank you for letting me hijack your wish. Hijack your wish, I said. Thank you for wearing that dress which is like, huh. He said. I shook my head, trying not to smile at him. I didn't want to be a granite, but then again, he knew what he was doing, didn't he? It was his choice too. Hey, how's the poem end? He asked. Huh? The one you recited to me on the plane. Oh, Prufrock. It ends. We have lingered in the chambers of the sea, by seagulls wreathed with seaweed red and brown, till human voices wake us, and we drown. Augustus pulled out a cigarette and tapped the filter against the table. Stupid human voices always ruining everything. The waiter arrived with two more glasses of champagne and what he called Belgian white asparagus with a lavender infusion. I've never had champagne either, Gus said after he left, in case you're wondering or whatever. Also, I've never had white asparagus. I was chewing my first bite. It's amazing, I promised. He took a bite, swallowed. God, if asparagus tasted like that all the time, I'd be a vegetarian too. Some people in a lacquered wooden boat approached us on the canal below. One of them, a woman with curly blonde hair, maybe 30, drank from a beer, then raised her glasses toward us and shouted something. We don't speak Dutch, Gus shouted back. One of the others shouted a translation. The beautiful couple is beautiful.